brought in a 62 Oldsmobile to do some mechanical work.
I'd like to get it running, driving and stopping. For us and my family, this isn't just a car. It's not just some sheet metal. This is a family member. It's been in my family since new. It's been through so many different trials and tribulations throughout my family's history. I'm the youngest of four. All of us kids drove it to prom, and now I'm the last one to end up with it. And I need your help to get it to where I think it ought to be.
As the list grew, unfortunately, it took up pretty much all the budget. I mean, everything about the car is magnificent, but it just doesn't look great. Hey, Audrey,
Yeah,
I want to do something.
that's never a good thing.
Yeah, I know. I want to fix the paint. No, I want to make the paint look better.
On this?
Well, yeah, stylistically, I think they did a pretty amazing job.
I think it's definitely got a lot of character. I don't like a lot of wagons, but this one came with a sunroof originally, and the dash has a whole lot of character. It has grown on me.
I hate seeing that much style and now it running great, all going out with this all over it. It just feels wrong. Stylistically, this car is very interesting. And now that it runs good, I just want to see it going out, not looking like, it's a little bit of an athlete now that still looks like the ugly duckling, you know what I mean? Can you start looking for paints, and I'm gonna sort of assess just how bad it is, because there's all sorts of paint problems. So step one, we have to try and match the paint.
That's the white that I found.
That's the closest one. All right, so the challenge with mixing paint is you have to start with a base, and it actually looks like a fairly nice creamy white. And there's only three colors in the whole world, right? It's red, yellow, and blue. We start with this, and we're gonna move the paint. There's actually thousands of shades of white. We're going to experiment until we get the right shade for the car. There's a lot of optic illusions when it comes to mixing paint. I'll just tell you that right now. So right there, what color would you say we need to move the paint by looking at it in just like ambient light?
It needs to be lighter, it
Right.
looks like.
I agree with you. I think we need to add white to it, right? We need to brighten the color. Now look at it where it dripped on the car, and what way do we need to move it?
Darker.
Right. So you see what I'm getting at is right here, it looks like you need to add white to it, and right there, it looks like you need to add black to it.
Right.
Let's go start with little bits of black.
Okay. Matching the paint on this one was a little bit more difficult because the paint itself is so dirty.
This is where you shoot from the hip. The good news is we don't need to move it in any one of the color spectrums. It's virtually the perfect cream. It's just a little bit too bright.
Right.
Right? So I've got a rule of thumb, and that is with a solid paint, I only use 5 colors to mix. I try pure white, pure black, which is to lighten and darken. You have to be very careful with both of those. And then a pure red, a pure yellow, and a pure blue. In this case, the black. I always mix a fair amount so that you at least, don't start with like 3 drops, because you can't mix 1/10 of a drop, right? So we're gonna throw 4 grams of paint in here, which is also enough to do something with. So there's 1.5, 2,
3.
need a little more. And this is nicely stirred up, so our pigments should be fairly even. We got 4 grams, and I now start working in drops. And so I just want 1 drop of black. And I know it's going to sound silly, but even something as simple as stirring, you need to stir the sides, you don't want to find out later on you had a little tiny wisp of something that went in. So here's my rule. I eyeball it till with base I get as close as I can. And then once I'm as close as I can, I add clear and I begin my tests. So let's go see.
Okay.
What we're going to do now is we're going to experiment until we get the right shade for the car. Tell me the truth. Does that look like it's too light, too dark, or just right?
Just right.
If this were a 1962 Ferrari, with a paint job and there was only one mark in an otherwise perfect paint job, we would spend even more time because we would start getting into fractional drops. This is an Oldsmobile with 4,000 cuts, bruises, and scratches in it, and we're trying to make it look a little tiny bit better. I think it's probably good. So I'm going to try and add the equivalent of about 2 grams of clear, and I'm not going to put it on the scale. I'm just going to eyeball it because if it's a little bit too much or a little bit too little, it doesn't really matter all that much. As long as you get some clear and some activator in it in close to the ratio, this is where the fun starts. I actually enjoy this part. Let's go. And what I want to do is we're going to sort of validate our whole process tomorrow by seeing this. Now, right now, you notice how it looks a little bit whiter?
Well, because the bad touch-up next to
Well,
it.
that's helping too, but this paint is dirty. That paint will darken with hardeners and catalysts. So at this point, I think we walk away, we've got a formula, and we test it, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, we'll mix it again and try something different. Now that we think we found the right shade with clear, the second stage is filling in what turns out to be hundreds and hundreds of chips and scratches all over the car. Everybody's sort of pitching in and throwing paint brushes all over this car. You could almost use a roller with as big as these chips are in places, but we are actually going to use some artist brushes. Now that we've done the basic first 2 steps, which is matching the paint and overfilling, it's time to cut the fills down to the point where they're at the right level. And there's 2 techniques for that, sandpaper and razor blades, and I'm going to show Audrey a little bit of both. So I picked a spot right here because I'm just going to show you and then you're going to do all the rest of this. So that's 3,000 grit. I'm going to take 1,500 grit. I'm going to use a sanding block and you're not. So paint with clear coat is generally about 6 thousandths thick. Paint without clear coat is generally about 4 thousandths thick. Okay. So we've got about 4 thousandths thick, and by comparison, I think a human hair is about 6 thousandths. Okay, so this is generally speaking thinner than a human hair. So it's very thin. So what we've got to do is we've got to do an educated guess at how do we cut of that 4 thousandths the top thousandth only off. So with your fingers, very, very carefully, I want you to sand into that black stain until it goes away. Just you know, use your finesse very gently, right? Like, all right? All right, so there's a little bit more right there. So go ahead and get that one spot. All right, but you saw how fast that went away. You probably cut about 1/1000th of the paint off in, what was that, like all of 8 seconds? All right, so what's really important is being able to see it. So you can see how high that sort of bump shows up.
Right.
So the light is gonna super highlight it for you. And it's important that you see it because the last thing you wanna do is cut through it. So you wanna sand and feel. And it's kind of a, you know, a back and forth process. And this is that part like when you're working on a really beautiful paint job. You know, they call it that pucker moment. Just don't want to cut through it. So you see right now, like feel it and tell me if you can still feel it. And be honest, can you feel it at all?
Yeah.
But you notice it's, so we're just about where we want to be. Now I'm going to switch to 3,000 if I can bum that from you. And so now that I'm there, I want to be even more careful about cutting through it. You want me to show you a new trick?
Yeah.
Let's go grab a razor blade. If the paint is less than 24 hours old, you can actually slice it. If it is more than 24 hours old, you need to scrape it. So it's a matter of what angle you take your blade. So you see how long that shadow is casting? Mm-hmm. Now watch what happens as I focus right on it and start taking it down. Okay, and you can bend the blade just a little bit. See how very quickly it's coming down? Now that I've got it down most of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and shave this one too, and try, see how the car is flat in that direction but curved in this direction? Turn the opposite direction of the curve, and you have less of a chance of cutting other paint. So here's my standard on paint repair, especially on a paint job like this. 5 feet. So I want you to stand. Tell me when my finger is directly over the repair.
I don't see it.
Okay, so have I met the standard of a 5-foot repair?
Yeah.
I've already met it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see what it looks like when we buff it. So we're going to take and put just a little dab right there. And we're going to see if we still meet the 5-foot repair standard. Now, stand back at the 5-foot level. Did the repair disappear? Mm-hmm. Can you see it at all? Try hard. Mm-mm. Okay, so you see my point. Before that was a black rusty hole that was in the car, and now you can't even find it.
Right.
Now, if you get close enough and you bring a magnifying lens, well then, go away, leave my car alone. But at this point, would you consider that an acceptable repair?
Yeah.
All right, so guess what you have to do now? That same thing about 1,000 more times. All right, so let's get to work.
So it's more of a drawn out process because you have to go through and do multiple layers of touch-ups. So you're constantly filling them to get it up to the level of the rest of the car before you can cut it down and then buff it so that it shines up.
Quite honestly, when it did come in, it sort of shocked me the wrong way. But now that it's running and it's driving, really well, and we did all these touch-ups on it and cleaned up the car, it's changed my mind. I thought that the 1956 Nomad was the only beautiful station wagon ever made. I'm now going to add the 1962 Oldsmobile to that list.
Oh my gosh. You did clean the paint up.
Just a little.
Oh my, I don't know if I've ever seen it this shiny in my life.